a kid with a new band said, would I come and see his band? And I said, how long you been together? And he said, 2 years. And I said, how many shows have you played? And he goes, a lot, man. 50 shows. He says 50. And I went, whoa, okay. This is recently. How long are your shows? Like 40 minutes, said 40 minutes. Oh, okay. So you played 50 in two years. That's a lot, right? He goes, yeah. I said, well, when you get to 500, call me and I'll come and see you. And he goes, what do you mean, man? I said, well, you're going to suck until you hit about 500 and I don't have time to watch you suck.
Yeah.
So when he goes, we'll never do 500. Then he says to me, how many shows you do? And I said, well, pal, I hate to tell you, but in the first 30 months of the band's career, which went from March 73 to September 75, I played 3,245 45-minute shows. So if the question is, how do you get good at what you do? You got to do it a lot.
Beautiful.
What's good, everybody? So excited for this conversation with JJ French. JJ French founded Twisted Sister, one of the most successful and famous and infamous rock bands of all time. We're going to talk through his very storied career, the very interesting arc, and the perseverance that it took for over 9,000 live shows in order to get from regional stardom to global superstardom. It is not a smooth. It is a road rife with bumps and chaos. But the coolest part about it was a road of learning from your audience, listening, trying new things, pushing everything that they could, from their stage presence to their makeup and their costumes that they were wearing. Like, there is just this element of genius and strategy behind everything they did, and it worked. That's the beautiful thing. It actually worked. So it gives somebody like me a hope, where it's like, okay, you can look at the strategy, you can see the hard work, but at the end, if you persevere and you get through all those lumps, you can make it to that other end of the mountaintop that is rock stardom and success. So great conversation with JJ. I think you're going to learn a lot, just as a music fan, and if you're a musician out there, it's a very inspiring story. It makes you want to get up and work. So look forward to that. Before we get into it, I want to introduce our title sponsor, DistroKid. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, literally unlimited, as much as you want. And artists get to keep 100% of royalties and earnings, which we'll talk to JJ French a little bit about there too. But you get a code. A promo code with our podcast to be able to get 30% off. So go to distrokid.com/VIP/lovemusicmore to get your 30% off. 1 million plus artists, including myself, rely on DistroKid to get their music onto Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all of the major streaming services. So check it out today. Get your 30% off. And one of my favorite things about it, I can collaborate with other artists, send them split codes. So then whatever they do, whatever we agree upon, 50-50, more them, more me, whatever it is, DistroKid handles all of the accounting so that everybody gets paid, everybody's happy, and you don't have to deal with it yourself. You're not Venmoing people. You're just letting DistroKid do that work. So it's a great tool. distrokid.com/VIP/lovemusicmore to support the show, support your career, and get 30% off. Enjoy this conversation with JJ. What's good, everybody? I am Scoobert Dubert, and welcome back to Love Music More. I am joined with JJ French from the band Twisted Sister. I'm so excited to talk to you about your love of music. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So first hard-hitting question that I wanted to ask. What do you really think about disco? Like, really, heart of hearts.
First, let me just say I'd like to thank Melissa for hooking us up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've known Melissa for many, many years, incredibly talented musician. I've known her since she was like 15 years old. I've mentored her, and I'd like to thank her for making this connection. Okay. What do I think of disco? The problem with disco had nothing to do with the music per se. It had to do with the impact it was having on the clubs we were playing in at the time. It was an economic situation that we were faced with, a calamity, as a matter of fact, because if you were playing in the bars in the New York area, especially back in those days, and it's probably impossible for people outside of New York to fathom how big the bars were and how successful you could be playing, quote, cover material. but the bars held up to 5,000 people. These are bars. These are not clubs. These are not professional play. These are bars that people would go and drink. On off nights,
Hmm.
maybe there'd be 300 or 400 people. On weekends, maybe up to 5,000. It's a massive market in the tri-state area. What was happening was when disco hit, the club owners who didn't like rock to begin with and were forced to take us as the decade switched from the 60s to the 70s, and a lot of these were old school guys who owned the bars back when they had doo-wop bands and like 50s bands. I mean, the first shows we ever opened was for Little Anthony and the Imperials and the Coasters, to give you an idea. Anyway, they were grudgingly dragged into the rock world, grudgingly dragged into the glam world, but they were making money, right? So they didn't care. They were making money. They didn't like the way our fans dressed, ripped jeans, sneakers. So when disco came with the three-piece suit and nice cars, a lot of them went, hey, let's get rid of these rock bands, put disco in. So they started closing a lot of the rooms off to the rock acts. And that's where we got annoyed because it was a class issue for us. It was purely a class issue. Had nothing to
Yeah.
do with a racial issue because everybody, frankly, I mean, it was Long Island. It was like the audience was 90% white on both sides. It didn't matter, 95% probably.
Mhm.
But people were coming in with nice suits and stuff, and all talking like John Travolta. And they didn't like rock and roll. And our fans didn't like disco because it represented a cultural thing they didn't like, So I personally didn't bother me. You have to remember it ruled the radio. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't hit top 40 radio without hearing disco after disco hit after disco hit after disco hit. Studio 54 became a symbol of everything. And so we targeted the disco and the era and all that just because of the way that we were being treated as rock musicians. I'll give you an idea of how bad it got. There was a club called Uncle Sam's, which was a disco in Long Island. And they prided themselves on being a disco. But when New Wave came in, they grudgingly had to start having New Wave nights. So instead of changing the name of the room, which a lot of these rooms did, they went back and forth and changed the name. They had a back door to the parking lot.
Okay.
And they named the back door Spit. And the disco kids come on the front door, which is a pretty entrance. And the rock musicians had to walk through a back door called Spit. Does that kind of give you an idea of how bad it was? And the club owners had to buy, but except for that room, the club owners had a binary choice: rock or disco. Rock. They wouldn't mix the two. They really didn't want to mix the two. I guess they didn't want to confuse the issue. I guess if they were hiring DJs, they had to pay the DJs, so they couldn't afford to go back and forth. So we saw rooms go from disco to rock to disco to rock. And every time they shut down a rock room for disco, it hurt us financially. That's what the issue was. The music itself was, look, disco is pop music. It's pop. I'm a pop music guy. I don't hate the Bee Gees. I interviewed the producer of the Bee Gees documentary on my podcast, the JJ French Connection. You want to hear how I really feel? You should listen to that podcast, actually, because Frank Marshall, one of the most famous producers in the history of Hollywood, produced the Bee Gees documentary. I was blown away by the Bee Gees documentary. I was blown away by the fact that they were as overwhelmed by the disco thing. Like, they got pigeonholed. They're a pop group, right? They're a great pop group, not just a good pop group. One of the greatest pop groups of all time. They make this record, sells a trillion copies, and all of a sudden, it's like a typecast actor. You can't get out of it. So they weren't happy about that either. So it made me much more empathetic to the dilemma they were in. As musician to musician. Let's just be fair. Musician to musician. Most of the pure musicians that I knew at the time had no grudge against it. A job is a job, a gig is a gig.
Yeah.
But this was the cultural issue. I hope that kind of helps you to understand what was going on.
That does. And that segues to what I really want to talk about and kind of the core that I want to have come across to the listeners, because I was just watching your documentary last night, We're Twisted Fucking Sister. I was struck by the professional musician at the core of all of this, where there is an outside perspective, maybe a surface level perspective of the music that you've made and the image that you've cultivated that is very well known, thanks in part to all of your time on MTV. And then there's the backstory. How many shows have you played at this point?
before the record deal was signed,
Yeah,
we went through several personnel changes,
totally.
but the name Twisted Sister
Mhm.
with me in it, beginning March of 73, I had played over 7,500 shows before the record deal. Dee came in and Eddie came in 3 years after. And when I say 7,500, people say, how do you arrive at that figure?
Mhm.
Well, it's very simple. The math is very simple. We average 3 shows a night for 250 nights a year. Add that up, it's like thousands and thousands of shows. And people say, well, it's like sets. No, it's not. We were a show band. Every set was a performance, every set was a change of clothing, every set was a different approach to the set.
Yeah.
And frankly, if you read the history of Led Zeppelin or the Who, they talk about their how many shows they played. If they played one television show and played one song, that was a show.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
Who played the Murray the K Easter show in 1967, which you can't possibly fathom what that was like because it was rock reviews. This is before bands headlined theaters. They were part of 10 band reviews. So the Who and Cream were part of a 10 band review in which they were the opening artists in 1967 when no one knew who they were. And each band played 2 songs, and each show went on every 90 minutes, 7 shows a day for 9 days, 63 shows, changing the audience each time. I was reading the diary of the Who. They go, we played 63 shows in 7 days. Well, in fact, they played 2 songs every 90 minutes, like 7 times a day. So you can make and say, well, it's only 14 songs. Well, whatever, guess what? They had to go on stage and do a show, even if the show was 2 songs. I saw them. They smashed up their gear. That means they smashed up their gear every, and then
Oh my God.
I met Roger Daltrey years later and I asked him,
Yeah.
I said, I was at the Murray the K show. I saw Pete Townsend destroy an amplifier. And he said to me, how old were you? I said, I was 14. He goes, you're so naive. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we couldn't possibly afford to destroy all the equipment. So we had a special amplifier cabinet made
Yeah.
with no speaker in that corner, but with a
Cool.
grill cloth. So we just kept going. So Pete would go through a hole and he wasn't destroying anything.
Oh,
And I
that's
went,
awesome.
dumb me. I'm like, whoa, man. He just went through an amplifier grill, right?
Yes.
So there you go. So they played 63 shows. So yes, we played
Yeah.
thousands. And D came in 76 with Eddie. I say probably D was, well, I can tell you, someone asked me, a kid with a new band said, basically, would I come and see his band? And I said, how long you been together? And he said, 2 years. And I said, how many shows have you played? And he goes, a lot, man. 50 shows. He says 50. And I went, whoa, okay. This is recently. How long are your shows? Like 40 minute sets. 40 minutes. Oh, okay. So you played 50 in two years. That's a lot, right? He goes, yeah. I said, well, when you get to 500, call me and I'll come and see you. And he goes, what do you mean, man? I said, well, you're going to suck until you hit about 500 and I don't have time to watch you suck.
Yeah.
So when he goes, we'll never do 500. Then he says to me, how many shows you do? And I said, well, pal, I hate to tell you, but in the first 30 months of the band's career, which went from March 73 to September 75, I played 3,245 45-minute shows. So if the question is, how do you get good at what you do? You got to do it a lot.
Beautiful. I've got some big news, everybody. My vinyl record is out. We didn't make a ton of these, so these guys are going to sell out, and I would love for you to get your hands on one of them because they're so dope. They're so dope. And it comes with a whole bunch of like liner notes and pictures and special stuff, the things that really went into making this record. And I want you to get your hands on it. So go to scoobertdubert.pizza or check out my Instagram for a link or click the link in the show notes or the bio or wherever you're watching this to pick up your copy. They're going to sell out. We really did not make very many of these. And I want you to have it. It's like a collector's item. So thank you. Thank you for supporting my music. And I can't wait for you to hear it actually on physical vinyl. Enjoy the rest of the episode. And that's what I'm looking for right there. Because I think that's such a tangible thing, regardless if you make music, whatever you do, actually hitting rubber hits the road, getting out there. And it's also kind of fun for me as, a musician in 2024 trying to break. It almost feels like hearing about pitchers in the MLB that would it was 15, we went in extra innings, so I pitched a no-hitter and just played the whole game. It's like that energy that is almost mythical. And
But what they didn't tell you was how many innings they pitched prior to that no-hitter. How many, since they were 10 years old. The father having him out on the T-ball range, right?
Right.
Look, I don't care if it's rock and roll or an Olympic gold medal for skiing or violin first chair at Carnegie Hall. You only get there
Mhm.
after you've done it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Now, can you have a hit record out of nowhere? Yes, that's the weirdness of my industry. Can you win American Idol and have a hit record? Maybe. Yeah, you can. But when you do that, it's almost a disservice to yourself
Mm.
because you're being told you're great before you're really great. And then you start believing your own hype. And then you don't work hard enough. When I watch a winner of American Idol thank the fans for sticking with him for 15 weeks, I almost have to fall off my chair
Mhm.
because when we thank our fans in a festival, I say, thanks for sticking with us for 50 years. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing. And we've gone up and down and up and down. And, it's kind of like, it's a tough business. It's really, really hard. But to be great at anything, you got to do it a lot. And I will tell you this. I wrote a book called Twisted Business, and I talk about the boredom of excellence. And someone said, what is the boredom of excellence? I said, the guy that wins the gold medal for skiing downhill has been doing it, or the woman, since they were probably 8 or 9. They're up at 5 o'clock in the morning almost every day practicing. And now they're 28 and they win a gold medal because they've done the downhill 8 billion times in solitary with nobody watching, just like doing it. The person who's the first chair violinist at Carnegie Hall, you can bet has been playing since they were 7 or 8 years old, practicing 4 hours a day,
Mhm.
learning their craft to be great over and over again, where most people just go, hey, man, like, that's not me. I want to sit on my couch with a remote control and watch a football game. I'm not going to sit there and do that. Well, guess what? That's fine. The world needs people to buy tickets for it,
Mhm.
but the world needs people to be those people.
Yeah.
And those people tend to be the winners. But you can do all of that and still not win.
Mhm.
And there's plenty of those. So I get it. I get it. It's all risk, but it just depends on how bad you want it.
The perseverance that you showed through all of those gigs, and there's a lot that I want to unpack in it, but maybe we touch on that first. I was taking the note about when you had these different moments where it's like, here's the big break, here's the big show. We are booking out. We're not going to play for 2 months in the surrounding tri-state area, and we're going to finally play Manhattan. That's going to be the big show, only to be stymied by a grand mal seizure. Beyond how that rippled out, but how did it feel? What was that like being in that moment on the precipice of what you've been grinding for 7,500 gigs, and it's postponed?
Awful.
Yeah.
I mean, we had already overcome a whole lot of rejections at that point. And the rejections got more dramatic as, it's kind of like when you go to the Super Bowl, you have to keep winning those playoff games and then finally you get to the big game and then you lose the big game. And it's like the pain of getting to that point is excruciating and then you lose.
Right.
So that night was the pinnacle of a particular era of the band's bar career that was culminating in that particular night. We famously, when people said to me, why don't you play CBGBs? I said, we're too big for all those places. We don't need to go to those places. We're selling out 5,000 seat bars. Why am I coming in Manhattan to play? Nothing against CBs or anything, but that's not us. We're better than that. We sell out the Palladium. No one ever did that before. Biggest night of our career. And bingo, epileptic seizure in the dressing room after the sound check, cancel the show. It was hard. I mean, it was painful. And because I don't drink and I don't do drugs, you deal with the pain head on. I learned some lessons from that. I'd learned lessons from the other setbacks, but I did learn a lesson. I managed an artist who wrote a gospel song. And in this gospel song, there's a line in the song, and I happen to think it's one of the best lines I ever heard in a song because it echoes the whole thing of when the going gets tough, the tough get going. It's not many times you get knocked down. It's how many times you get back up. It's all these cliches, and they're all wonderful, and they're written for a reason. And his line was, when the roof caves in, it lets the sunshine in. That was his line. So the question you have to say to yourself, what gives you the strength of character to go on after that?
Mm-hmm.
And I developed this teaching method which I talk about when I do my motivational speaking, which you can hire me as your speaker because of my book, The Twisted Method of Reinvention, in which I said, here's what we did. We didn't know we were doing this. We didn't know what I'm about to explain to you is I didn't know that we did this, but in looking and keeping diaries, this was the process by which we overcame every single setback. First, we acknowledged and mourned the setback because you can't deny it. It happened. You get over that. Then you retool. In other words, you think about what happened, why it happened, and what you could do to improve the next opportunity that comes up. First you mourn it, then you reflect on it. That's really the key. You reflect first, and then you have to do a lot of soul searching. You have to be honest with yourself. Then you have to retool your product, and then you have to reapply the new retooling. And that's really what we did over and over and over again. In this particular case, the only retooling was we had to come up with another date, and then we described exactly what happened with that setback. But the point is that almost all the time that we took the hit, we mourned it, we reflected on it, and then we retooled ourselves, better songs, better demos, better this, better that, better show. And then we reapplied those tools that we had at our disposal. And we did this over and over again. And I can't tell you we did it because we were geniuses in knowing that this was the process. But I will say that me and Dee and Mark and Eddie, especially because we went through a lot of drummers, we kept saying to ourselves, how can we be so popular and suck at the same time? In other words, how can we not get a deal if we're this popular? I can understand no one's showing up at the clubs, but if we're playing 250 nights a year within a 50-mile radius of Manhattan, selling out almost every single night, year after year after year after year, playing to 1,000 people, 1,200 people, 1,500 people, 2,000 people, 2,500. I mean, the clubs were gigantic. Well, that means you're doing something right. And we believed in ourselves. So you have to believe in yourself, but you also have to be really clear-eyed about it. No band, you know how you go see a band and go, they suck, they suck. Well, no band says to themselves, we suck. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks you're good. You have to believe in yourself, but you also have to be realistic. Maybe you do suck, like just because someone says you suck doesn't mean you don't suck. You could suck. And then figure out why you sucked. So in many of the cases, because we had such success on the local level, it was hard to figure out why we sucked.
Yeah.
Because if we sucked, why would these people keep coming back night after night after? Remember, this is a fishbowl we're in, 50-mile radius of Manhattan, hundreds of bars. Drinking age was 18. 15-year-old kids are getting in with fake proof. We did retool, we reapplied, we did the show again. And of course, that led to another calamity, which is described in the movie We Are Twisted Fucking Sister, which is available on Thunderflix, which is an online heavy metal video service.
It's a really good video service too.
Great service, based in the UK, based in the UK, but worldwide.
Yeah.
Go on Thunderflix. You have 1 million artists, 1 million bands, and you'll watch our story, and you'll see how that story goes. But that story takes you to a certain point. My book, Twisted Business, takes you to a more fuller picture of the whole story because it gets much crazier. I mean, you could almost pick any story in the book and go, could it get any crazier than that? And the answer is it does.
It does.
And it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And people always say to me, how do you consistently come back? And a couple of times we didn't. Or a couple of times we really took a long time. After the band dissolved in 87, it took 12 years to reassemble that. I had taken it to its absolute end.
Yeah.
If you look at any business, I don't care what the business is, and you look at the challenges that businesses have, apart from the success a business may have, a business is faced with 4 states of mind: challenges, crises, catastrophes, and the nuclear option. So what is that? A challenge is this crap that happens every day. Truck shows up late, band member's sick, that. A crisis is someone's really ill, maybe, or there's an accident, your stuff gets stolen, that's a crisis. Catastrophe, well, think of it like a plane that's flying, you've got turbulence, right? Little turbulence is mild, and then you got more, and a catastrophic turbulence is basically, you're going down. Hopefully the pilot can get out of it before you're dead. And then there's the nuclear option, which is you have to destroy everything to rebuild. And I was taken to that point. And in the book, I describe it. I was taken to the nuclear option where everything had to be destroyed to be rebuilt. And it came back. And much to our satisfaction and history, it came back bigger than it ever was. But you go through hell.
Yeah.
And again, why the character? Me, D, Mark Mendoza, we don't do drugs and drink. Like we had a
Mhm.
very straight band, which means it was all business. You know, it was
Yes.
business, business, business. Eddie, AJ, they a couple beers here and there, but they were
Mhm.
all focused. We were all focused
Mhm.
in. The image was that we're crazy, right? The
Right.
image
Yeah.
is we're twisted fucking sister. We must
Yeah.
be on every drug on the planet. The
Mhm.
fact is, we were not only not on any drug, but we couldn't hang out with artists who were
Yeah.
not for any reason that has to do with legality or morality. We just didn't. It just wasn't my thing, man. And it wasn't D's thing, and it wasn't Mark's thing. And when it's not your thing to party, why are you partying? Why are you hanging out with these guys? Everybody wants to get drunk and party. I take nothing away from all the bands that succeeded doing that because they obviously figured it out.
Yeah.
The Motleys, the Van Halens, the Sabbaths, they all did,
Mhm.
to varying more or less degrees. I
Mhm.
don't pass judgment on any of them. That's just not how we functioned. We functioned with a business model. That was how we functioned. And again, I'm not telling you that business model was predetermined. It evolved.
Yes.
And it evolved if you watch the documentary because the first version of the band was full of raging
Yes.
alcoholics.
Yes.
And I was not a drinker, never have been a drinker. So I didn't know anything about alcoholism. Here's what I thought when I was
Mhm.
20 years old. Okay. I'm joining a band called Twisted Sister. Me and Kenny, the bass player, were the last two guys hired on the same day, right? December 20th, 1972. The singer, the guitar player, the drummer, they like to drink. But I was never surrounded by drinkers in New York City because all my friends were druggies. They were drug addicts, heroin addicts, but nobody drank. Believe it or not, no one drank. They were
Yeah.
doing every drug in the world, but nobody
Yeah.
drank. So I didn't know what alcoholism was like. But if you read all the stories on the Rolling Stones and all these bands, everyone's like, drunk. I figured, okay, that's rock and roll. Yeah, it looks cool. Keith Richards is cool,
Right.
stumbling around. And I'm buying it 100%, buying
Mhm.
into the whole myth. So I'm figuring they drink, big deal. I don't care.
Mhm.
They drink. As long as they can perform, I don't care. But lo and behold, alcohol use led to the demise of the band
Yeah.
in a drunken bar fight, which is described in the movie. And confronted with that 2 years into the band's career, I was faced with a dilemma, which was get out of the business or find people that didn't drink and do drugs. Try
Mhm.
to find people that don't drink and do drugs in this
The
business.
music business, right?
I mean, try to find that. It's
Right.
like trying to find a Jehovah Witness in Las Vegas.
Mhm. Mhm.
It ain't happening. I mean, it calls for people like that because of the myth of who that is.
Yeah, and
That's the
it's not a normal career. It's not a 9 to 5. It's somebody that wants to live an alternative lifestyle.
like an outlaw biker in a way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're living outside the margins.
Mhm.
I get it. I get that. You live outside the margins. You're like living an outlaw lifestyle.
Mhm.
You're an entrepreneur because musicians are entrepreneurs. You're living an outlaw lifestyle.
Mhm.
But that's not how we conducted our business. We didn't
Yes.
conduct our business like an outlaw lifestyle. And we made the appearance that we did because that's what you sell. But that wasn't us. And therein lies the story, really.
And a key part of that is the story of doing it the hard way, of going through the industry rather than the elevator ride of auditioning for a label and then getting placed or something like that. You did all of these things on your own. And it's interesting too that you were kind of the calm in that storm all around you. That as the band evolves, and this is what I wanted to talk to you next, knowing two things. When is it time to move on from a band member? And how do you know, like, who's next up? How do you know, okay, that person will work from the scene or this person's added to the Rolodex? How did you navigate that? Because, yeah, you had a lot of lineup changes and you were the sole, you were the rock in the storm that weathered through them all and pushed the band forward and made it so that, hey, losing a bass player doesn't mean that we're losing the band in the process.
Well, let me give you credit as the first person to ever ask me that question.
Well, thank you.
And I've done hundreds of these, and no one ever asked me, how did you know? Or how do you? And how did you? And all that. Well, it's instinctual
Yeah.
because I never read a book on success,
Mhm.
but I do know this the band's level of professionalism in the bars and our success in the bars dictated an excellence among the musicians of an approach in order to stay together and continue to play.
Yes.
Because we became bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and had to deliver a bigger and bigger show, which meant that the
Okay.
responsibility of staying great was foisted on us on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And if you can't keep up with that, you're out. Okay.
Yes.
So therein lies the answer. Like, you got to find guys that can put up with that. Oh, by the way, when it comes time to get rid of someone, you know it's time to get rid of someone. You just know. I mean, everyone looks at each other and goes, "This is it." We can't deal with this crap anymore. But we already had a protective shell of success, so we knew that we dictated the terms. Nobody could dictate the terms to us. We dictated them. So when I say to a guy at rehearsal, by the way, just want you to know, you're a good drummer, you're good this, but we don't drink, don't do drugs. We really frown on it. And I'm not going to tell you can't drink a beer here and there. We're not running a Christian youth group, but understand we're working 5 or 6 nights a week and rehearsing on the off days, which means we're working, which means that you leave for a gig at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for wherever it is. You get there by 3 or 4 or 5. You do the sound check. You wait in the dressing room until 9. You do your show at 10, 11, 12, whatever. You finish at 2 o'clock in the morning. You get in the car. You drive home. You maybe go to a diner, get something to eat, get home at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to sleep, wake up and do it again.
Yeah.
Every day, day in, day out. And on the off days, we're rehearsing. And maybe we won't rehearse one day. But other than that, you have to expect we are rehearsing because the show has to be kept fresh.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's a lot to take on. So if somebody's joining the band, they have 2 responses to my question about your indulgence. You either are honest with me and say, well, man, I thought I thought you guys like a regular party band and we're going to party. And if that's the way it is, no, which I respect.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And then I hope you succeed with another band. Or, hey man, I'm totally fine. I could do that. And then they collapse after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year. They can't keep it up. Yeah. So the question is, how come me, Eddie D, and Mark kept it up?
Mm-hmm.
We just did. I mean, I look back at the scheduling, and in my book, I have a diary of all the 9,000 shows. If you buy my book, you'll see them in the back, all the performances anyway. It's a crazy list. But when people say, how did you do it? I didn't think anything extraordinary about it. It was what we did. It's just what we did. In order to stay on top, this is what you did. And did it involve personal sacrifice? Yes. Did it hurt our relationship with our family and our girlfriends? Probably, because like the mafia or bikers, the family comes first. Twisted comes first, and everything else comes after. I mean, to use I don't know, a crazy but that's what they demand of you, that dedication.
Right.
Well, and by the way, that's not unusual to anyone that becomes great at anything they do. They've sacrificed. How many stories do you read? I didn't take care of my family. I watched marriages go down the tubes. I didn't take care of my children. These are the regrets that they all have. And I'm not telling you to live a lifestyle that's contrary to a healthy mental attitude about life. Mm-hmm. Not at all. I'm just saying that there's a common reason why people who are super successful tend to have those regrets, because we tend to put all of that first. Yeah. And we always put it first. Mm-hmm. And that's why. As you get older, wiser, more successful, richer, then you have control. Then you go, like now all these bands that are 70 and 80 years old that are touring, they bring their families out with them.
Yeah. Right.
Because they can.
Or they hire someone else to go do it. And they stay.
Or they hire another replacement player, right? Because you can. Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. So, let's go. And let's only play 3 nights a week or 2 nights a week. Exactly. I want to spend 3 nights on the Amalfi Coast, and I want to go, to
play a cruise ship gig. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Everything is you get older. And you can do these things, and that's a nice, that's the perk of doing it. That's the interesting thing about all these bands that are like 60, in their late 60s, early 70s now. Mm-hmm. They do it on their own schedule. They don't have to meet the band schedule anymore. What they're saying is, or the fan schedule, they're saying, this is us. We obviously know we're big enough to accommodate a comfortable schedule for our families and also accommodate your need as a fan to see us. And it's good for both worlds. Yeah. And that's what happens. But in the beginnings, no luck. You're out there and you're pushing your band first.
At what point do you start to go, okay, we need help? I don't want to be trying to shake down the promoter for money at 2 a.m. after I played the gig. Like when, and because this is a question that a lot of young musicians have, is like, where's the point at which you start to need a team that you want to start giving some of your money to in order to relieve yourself of some responsibility?
Great question. There are very few artist managers in the business.
Yes.
Very few in general. I don't care what part of the business. The only two that I know, and I'm sure there are more, the only two I know are Steve Miller and Mick Fleetwood, Fleetwood Mac. After reading Jenny Boyd, Mick Fleetwood's wife's book, I interviewed her. And I said to her, the amount of coke that guy did made Scarface look like a kindergarten teacher. How did he keep the business going? Because that's what got me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm straight in doing the business. This
Mhm.
dude was, I mean, and the book tells it. I'm not telling anything that's not in the book. And she had permission to write the whole story, and she did. And I said, how the hell could he function that fucked up?
Yeah.
And she said he had a lot of people around him that were able to cover his situations, which of course is the answer. But rather than turn it all over to one person, he maintains control over it. But he had put enough people in place. You know, it's like you have a cabinet. It's like a cabinet, a presidential cabinet.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So for me, we signed with a guy who had no idea what he was doing in 1973, and we stayed with him for a couple of years, and then the band broke up. Right when the band rather reassembled for its first changeover, the drummer who called me to audition for the band was also a business head. He's the one who taught me about the bar business, told me how the business ran, and explained to me in terms that I completely understood, and understood why the band could be successful early because of the unique situation that we were in and how the bar scene worked. And you could easily get a gig, which you can't do anymore. But in those days, you could work 6 nights a week, get paid $150 a night minimum. Remember, in 1973, gasoline was 28 cents a gallon. House rentals were $300 a month. You know, everything was proportionally correct. Band can make 900 or 1,000 a week. Everybody can make a salary, and you can cover your expenses, right? And your demo tapes if you're recording. Anyway,
the payouts have stayed flat, and the expenses have gone up.
100%. That 150 has not changed, and everything else in the world has screwed the pooch. Okay. So Mel took over, and that band lasted 8 months, and Mel conspired with the new guitar player to steal the gear from me. And it's in the book. The story's in the book. When I then put the band together again, I took over management and vowed to never bring another manager in. I said, I'm going to do this now. Hired D, Eddie, and then set the band on a trajectory for a business. And again, in my book, I describe the decisions that were made. You know, we were looking around going, how come that band's making 400 a night? We're making 200 a night. Immediately, I started to question the club owners reporting to the agents about how busy the clubs were. So one day I said to my agent, well, what did he tell you last night? He said, oh, there was only 75 people in the room. I said, there wasn't. The room was packed. He goes, well, you don't know that for a fact. So I had a friend of mine sit at a bar. Remember, we were playing every night all the time. It was easy. And the clubs were repetitive. I had them click at a bar, click people. And I was able to call my agent and go, I can tell you right now, it's 175 people last night. Awesome. I know for a fact. Yeah. Then I would hang out with the bartenders and I'd pretend to have a drink with them late at night. And then they would tell me their bar averages. So now I know how much they're making, right? So now I really know how much we're worth. So I remember the first time I called my agent, I said, listen, I want 300 a night or 350. He's not going to pay you. I said, well, then here's what you tell him. Say to him, hey, man, the band wants to thank you for the opportunity to play. And good luck with hiring another band, but thank you. And he said, why? I said, because he knows exactly how much money we make. He's lying to you, and he's going to immediately tell you, a second thought, I'll pay him. And it's exactly what he did, because I knew. There's a statement in law, don't ask a question in trial that you don't know the answer to. Okay?
Yes.
Now, this is basic business law. This is basic business technique. I'm a New York guy. My father was a jewelry salesman on 47th Street. I grew up in the rough and tumble era of New York City hustle. Plus, if you read my book, you'll know I was a drug dealer, and I learned all those techniques from dealing. It's street stuff. It's just street stuff. I'm dealing with street guys. I'm dealing with mob guys. You know, like we all understand our situation. You know, but I didn't threaten anybody. Just said, hey, man, cool. You know, if we're not worth it, you know, fine. Thanks. You know, but I knew. Of course I knew. And as we kept getting more popular, I kept clicking the door. And then everybody knew that we were clicking the door. And then they had to stop lying.
Right.
We knew exactly what we were doing. Now, the other side of that is not only were we drawing people, but we also wanted to know what these other bands could be doing that we weren't doing that maybe were better than us, that we had to bring our game up.
Yes.
This band had a better PA. That band had a better light show.
Yes.
We started investing. We always took the money, put it back, never took it ourselves. Expenses, kept small salaries relative to what we earned.
Yes. Band
was on board with that. I didn't have a guy going, no, man, I'm sorry. I don't want, I need more. No, not D then, he's the singer. A lot of guys think, oh, the singer's the most. No, he went, okay, if that's what you're making, that's what I'm making. That's fine, you know. So that's kind of like how that happened, you know. So now instinctively, that's it. When it became overwhelming,
Yes.
in 1979, the band was now right before the Palladium gig where we fell apart, where the guy had the thing. That summer, I wasn't sleeping much because the band had become massively popular. And I'd get home at 6 o'clock in the morning and I needed 8 hours sleep. And the phone would ring at 2 hours later because the truck broke down.
Mm.
This happened. This road crew guy's fighting with this road crew guy. The band member is upset with this band member. I'm not sleeping. I start going through days and days and days of no sleep, which you can't do, and play 3 hours of music every single night, right? It's playing on me, and I'm getting
Yeah.
more exhausted and more exhausted and more exhausted. And finally, a really good friend of mine wanted to get in the music industry, and he was a very smart guy. And he said, if you ever need help or want to bring a manager in or whatever, call me. I called him. I said, I need your help. I said, I need you to relieve me for a while until I'm prepared because I can't handle this lack of sleep. I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Sleep deprivation can kill you, you
Yes.
know?
Totally.
And he came over to the house and I sat him down. I showed him how the business ran, how the books were done, who the agent was. And I said, barring a catastrophe, don't tell me anything about business for the next 3 months until I tell you to. Just continue on.
Sorry to interrupt this very important broadcast, but it's time for one more advertisement for myself for this podcast. What I'm asking for is for you to rate it 5 stars, share it with your friends. This is like the most important thing for this podcast to grow. So if you want to do this, you go onto the podcast screen, right? You click on the ... on Spotify. Under there, it says rate show, and you go and you click it. 5 stars. If you could do that for me, that's the best way for the algorithms and all this stuff to share it out with the world. I know that it's a lot to ask, but if you could please just hit those 3 dots and then a 5 star, it would really help us out and helps us, get the word out and spread the love of music. So thank you. If you're listening on YouTube, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much. And here's the rest of the episode.
Now, to give you an idea of the kind of crap that can happen, one night we played a very big club in Long Island called Speaks in Island Park. And it was a typical Thursday night. And we were drawing, a typical 1,500 people, somewhere between 1,500 to a typical night, right? Great night. Get home, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, get a phone call. It's my truck driver. Tells me that, remember, we had a 24-foot truck with all the gear. As we were driving home, he heard a noise. And he looked out the rearview mirror. He's on the Long Island Expressway, the biggest highway in Long Island. And he looks out the side view mirror and he notices our mixing console has fallen out and it's just got run over.
Oh my God.
And he had to pull over. Now, he's calling me, which means this whole thing happened an hour before, whatever, because there's no cell phones. He had to get to it, but whatever he did. Immediately my heart is can't sleep. What do you mean, the mixing console? I said, where exactly in the truck was the mixing console packed? Because we carried all of our own PA, all of our gear. He goes, in the middle of the truck. I saw, if the mixing console fell out, what happened to everything in front of it? He goes, all gone. And I said, what do you mean all gone? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, I said, what's all gone? He goes, 7 drum cases, 3 amplifiers. But he's going through a whole list. And I went, you have to be kidding me. You have to be fucking kidding me. So I call up the state police, Nassau County Police, Suffolk County Police, and the local radio station that we advertised on, and said, Twisted Sisters gear is falling out in the LIE. Please call if you know, because we were not properly insured yet. This is a disaster, right? This is just an example of a disaster.
Exactly.
I'm really pissed, upset. I can't sleep, of course. I'm not going to wake up anybody else in the band. They need to sleep. And for the hell of it, I just called the nightclub to see if they know anything that could have happened. And remember, the club now was about 25 to 30 miles away from where this truck incident occurred. The chances that these guys would know any gear came out would be next to nothing. So, but I took a shot. Like this Sicilian custodian guy, like 80 years old, he picks up the phone. I said, hey, it's JJ from Twisted Sister. He goes, Twisted Sister, what's the matter with you people? Why don't you have a pack of your truck? You got equipment all over here. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, you didn't pack up the truck. Those are gears everywhere. I said, what's there? And he goes and he does a list. He comes back, goes 18 mic stands, 7 cases, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm mystified, right? Now I'm truly mystified.
Yeah. Yeah.
I call my driver up. I go, how fucked up were you and the whole crew last night that you group hallucinated, that you packed the truck? He goes, we packed this. No, you didn't. It's all it speaks. He goes, how could that be? I said, some 80-year-old dude just gave me a list and he's not lying. So you better get down to Speaks and you better get this gear. And I want to know what the hell happened. So now I'm relieved, but I still don't understand, because if this is the case, my whole road crew is on LSD.
Yeah.
They're all hallucinating that they just packed a whole truck worth of gear, which is probably not what happened. And I get a phone call from the manager of the club, Uncle Ralph Greco, who did talk like a guy in The Sopranos, Uncle Ralphie. And this is how the conversation went. He goes, hey, JJ, it's Uncle Ralph. He goes, what's with your fucking road crew? I go, what the matter? He goes, you know, last night after the gig, I'm across the street at the East Bay Diner having breakfast with my crew, and Fat Scotty, the door guy, these are all like mob, like, Jimmy the Chair, Freddie the Shoe, whatever. Fat Scotty comes in, he goes, hey, Ralphie, there's mic stands all over Long Beach Road. I go, what the fuck? I get in my car, I drive down Long Beach Road, which is the road that links the club to the highway. Shit is straight, it's all over the street. Mic stands, cases, guitars. He goes, and I get to the end of the line, and some dude's got a truck, and he's putting in his truck, and I walk out, and I look at the guy, I go, hey, this ain't your shit. Belongs to me. You're going to pack it all and bring it back to me. Now, the guy's intimidated because now he's, some guy's talking to him like this. The guy packs all the gear in the van and drives it back to Speaks. Now we get all the shit back. Now I'm wondering what the fuck happened.
Whoa.
And here's what happened.
Yeah.
And this is only one night. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I'm telling you the story of a night.
Right.
This by hundreds of occasions. So apparently what happened was, it was really cold. It was in the middle of winter. The crew packed the whole truck up, brought the door down, locked it, or thought they did, but didn't. The truck pulls out of the parking lot, because the parking lots are all like potholes and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bump. The lock pops off. The door opens. And over the next 2 miles, our stuff starts falling out of the back of the truck. Anyway, welcome to my world. So that's what happened that night. So my friend Joe comes in and he takes over. And for 3 months, I didn't have to deal with anything. I finally, got my brains back. And then I realized I have to make a choice. Am I either going to be a band member or be a manager? Because being both is really, really hard. And I said to the band, I don't know what I should do. If I should quit and just manage. They said to me, you make that choice. We don't want to make that choice for you. Do what you feel is right. You want to stay in the band, hire another manager. So we brought a guy in, and that guy we brought in is the guy who said, let's do the Palladium date.
Yeah. And
then brought us through the whole MTV period. And then when the band ended at that point, that was going to be the end of the band. When we decided to reform, I took over at that point. And also all during the dormant period of time from 1988, any records that were produced by me and Mendoza. Like, in other words, we took over the active creative, but we didn't have to play, so it didn't matter. Yeah. And we all had jobs anyway. If you read my book, I tell the whole story. I went from running a gym to selling stereo equipment, anything I could do to make money, because I wasn't in the band, and I thought the band was never going to get back together again. So that's all part of this. But I can tell you this, had I been a drug addict or an alcoholic, facing all these crises, including divorces and all that shit, I never would have been able to make those decisions correctly. Yes. I would have been too high. Yes. And all that stuff does is insulate you from your feelings and confronting your issues. I'm not a therapist, and I'm not telling you how to run your life. And I'm not telling you that guys who have succeeded have not had these crises and have drunk themselves into stupors. Yeah. It's not me.
Yeah. And that is that backbone of the band that is what helps allow you to, pitch those no-hitters, go out there night after night after night and take those blows and be in it for long enough in this war of attrition. And I wanted to talk to you about the predatory fish metaphor, because I think that it's really cool to think of a band that's iterative, that's always out there, always getting feedback from an audience, always watching other bands in the scene and taking on the coolest parts of what anybody else is doing and trying to meet those challenges and trying to be competitive. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So back in the early days, I said to the agent, how do you get more money? He says, well, you got to make sure that you put a better show on, you blow the band away. Cool. You got to blow them away.
Yeah.
Just make sure you go over better than the other band. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, you can stay friends with these guys. When you're on the stage, that's your baseballs. That's your football
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't know if you're into this hippie, lovey dovey, but no, blow the bands away. And the top bands in Long Island blew all these other bands away. I mean, there was hundreds of bands, hundreds of them. Your job was to, if you were playing against the band, blow the other band away so you could take their following, so it became very predatory for us. Every night became a contest. How well could we demoralize you?
Mhm.
How much of a show could we put on? Even if we were not technically better than you, we would put on a show that would be so dazzling that you would believe we were better than you. I mean, let's be honest. I'm an okay guitar player. I mean, I'm like a 250 baseball hitter, professional, show up on time, get my one hits every, 4 times at bat, whatever. But D happens to be an extraordinary frontman. I mean, D is the secret weapon, of course. He's an extraordinary frontman. But the band showed up and delivered every night, night after night after night after night after night. You can't be that successful and suck. You really can't. I mean, that's how you do it. So we became predatory, and it follows us to this day. When we're playing on a festival stage, I just want to annihilate the other bands, and I don't really give a shit. And by the way, to be for all the people out there go, hey man, but I love all these other bands. I said, yeah, I'm not telling you shouldn't love them, and you should love them. Go ahead. And if they blow us off the stage, go ahead, because they should be thinking that we're thinking, which is fuck Twisted.
Yeah.
We'll fucking show them who the fuck is. But I'm not offended by that. Blow me away. You know who wins? The fans win.
Exactly.
You do it for the fans. You put on the best show you can. If someone bests you at it, have at it, man. Never cared. Never restricted a band's PA. Never restricted a light. We went out Coke Bill or had take it all, man. Take every weapon you got.
Yeah.
I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's the pride we have. So yeah, the pride of demoralizing bands or going over better, whatever, whether they felt demoralized, whether they didn't, whether you want to take my words like in blabbermouth and reword them to make me sound like a fucking asshole, because that's what blabbermouth tends to do.
Mhm.
I am not saying we're better than anybody. I'm saying is we worked harder and we presented ourselves so that the perception would be that we are, which is why we always are listed as the greatest bands playing at any particular festival.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. The greatest example I can give was the Arrow Festival in Nijmegen, Holland. It was an amazing one-day festival with REO, Speedwagon, Kansas, Journey, Def Leppard, Twisted Sister, and Kiss in one day, in one afternoon.
Wow.
Okay? One afternoon.
Jeez.
Which is amazing for any fan, right? 80 euros. Every band played every hour on the hour. You got nothing but the hits.
Yeah, right.
All day long. Imagine being a fan of all these groups and just knowing I got Journey, I got Def Leppard, I got Motorhead, I got, oh my God, great. And we almost didn't do that show because Dee's plane took off late coming from Europe, and we had to fly him in by helicopter, which landed behind the stage 5 minutes before the band went on stage. And
oh my
we had
God.
on stage without stage clothes because we thought we were never going to play. So we're sitting around in t-shirts and jeans. So we go out and we're playing with t-shirts and jeans. And of course, Kiss is the headliner, the closer the night. We were sandwiched between Journey and Def Leppard, I think, somewhere in there. Anyway, we do our show in t-shirts and jeans. First time ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And we thought it was going to be like this great, we couldn't wait to put on our whole stage show. But we had no stage show to put on because we were just t-shirts and jeans. So it was kind of like we were back in the bars even before, like rehearsing for the bars.
Right.
All the tricks that we know, how to excite the audience, we pulled out every trick in the book. The next day, in the national newspaper in Holland, did a whole centerfold story, and they were very complimentary to all the bands. Great lineup. One photo, us in our stage clothes, and it said, the only band that gave a quasi-religious experience was Twisted Sister.
Cool.
And I said, that is the whole point.
Yep.
That's why we do what we do.
Yep.
There's a perfect example of why we do what we do.
What's good, guys? Scuba Dubert here for the Love Music More podcast, and I want to let you in on a little secret. One of my favorite new things, Minuendo lossless earplugs. So these are really, really, really cool. I've got 2 of them here. It comes in this awesome sweet box, but it comes with a bunch of little goodies like carrying case, tether, cleaning tools. But the real tech is in these little tiny lossless earplugs. My favorite thing about it is One, you can swap out any of the included tips. So depending on the size of your ear canal, we're all built different. You can get a nice, comfortable fit. But there's also this little lever on these adjustable versions that can go from 7 to 25 decibels of cutting. So depending on if you're listening to new metal or jazz, you can just hit the little lever and adjust in real time. And I think that's really, really cool. You know, for the longest time, I was listening in those awful foam earplugs, and it makes the music sound like that. It just cuts off all of those high frequencies. And so I was always tempted to sneak them out a little bit. Oh, it's my favorite song. No earplugs. And then you get hearing damage. You have tinnitus after the show, and then you come back, you want to work in the studio, and guess what? Your ears aren't right. And that's why I love Minuendo, because you can just pop these in and have full fidelity with these lossless earplugs. There are two different versions. One is adjustable with the little lever, and then this one is fixed at 17 decibels. So check out Minuendo, MINUENDO.com, or you can search them on Amazon and find Minuendo earplugs today.
And by the way, all the bands that day could say they had a great day. I'm sure they did.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure they were fine. But that's how and we took pride in that stuff, you know. And again, if you're better than us, be better than us. I really don't care, because all we can do is be us. But let me tell you, we get really excited when it comes on stage and we have to prove a point.
Yeah.
And that only comes from the years of playing.
Exactly.
The hundreds and thousands of shows. It's built into your performance technique.
Yes.
And it shows. I've gone on record saying there's only 3 times I thought a band took us. I've made this statement. And I've given my compliments to the 3 bands that have done it, and the 3 occasions that I believe I sat there and went, I don't know what happened tonight. Were we off? I don't know if D and I had the same 3 shows, but I do. And I know who it was. And I've told every one of those bands, I said, boy, by the way, you know, on that night, you were amazing. And you definitely blew us away. And well, I admit it, because what that does is it makes you go, why did they blow us away?
Yes.
Exactly why. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and if you run a business, isn't that part of what you do in business? You know, you look around you and you go, you're doing better than me there. I got to clean that out. I got to make sure that doesn't happen again. Yeah. And when you're playing as many shows as we played, you pretty much learn what not to do on the days that you screw up, you know, again. So, you know, the difference between baseball and any other sport is how many games they play during the course of a year. Yeah. So football is like 16 games, right? And hockey and basketball is like 81. But baseball is 162. Yeah. And, you know, even the team that wins the World Series loses a third of their games. If you look at real statistics in baseball, it's 3 parts. Every team is going to win at least a third of the games. Okay. Every team is going to lose at least a third of the games. It's what happens in the middle third that denotes whether or not you're going to go to the World Series, right?
Right.
So I often wonder, when a pitcher has a bad outing or a player goes 0 for 4, what are they thinking that night? Like when they go to sleep? Yeah. Baseball is the only sport, I believe, that is like us, because we play so much that they don't let it get, they go, okay, I'm going to make sure I don't do that tomorrow. Yeah. You know, I'm going to make sure I don't, because they can do it right away, because they got something coming up the next day. When you're playing once a month or twice a month, you don't have that luxury of getting right back out there. Like if you say to yourself, man, that was the wrong set list. Tomorrow we're redoing the set list. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like a baseball manager with a lineup card. Well, that lineup didn't work today, right? Let's change the lineup. The batter's up. Let's move the cleanup hitter down, or whatever. Yep. Same shit. The luxury of playing all the time is the ability to constantly tweak everything, which bands don't have. I mean, people listen to this stuff and they're going to go, oh, JJ, but I'm just giving you our roadmap, man. I'm not telling you your roadmap. Your roadmap is different. Obviously, there's no bars to play right now. So your roadmap is social media, probably.
My roadmap is song production. I'm doing the exact same thing with making songs. I make a song pretty much every week. So I'm averaging around 52 songs a year, actually finished, mixed, mastered, out the door. That's my version.
You learn something new every time?
Absolutely. Every record is like I'm a different person. Like a much better. It's like a master's degree.
There you go, man. Yeah. Right. Like I say, it's the boredom of excellence.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go out there, you do it, middle of the night, you're working, your wife or girlfriend, whatever. What are you doing? I got to get
Exactly.
this record done.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yep.
It's a dedication to your craft.
Yep.
And you know, how many times does a pitcher
Hmm.
go say it's all in the preparation? It's
Yes.
all in the preparation,
True.
man. You have to prepare yourself. This is
Well,
a
I
real
like
world
distance
issue.
athletes too, like the
Yeah,
marathon
yeah.
and stuff in the
Same thing.
Olympics.
I ran two of them. Oh yeah. I know exactly what it took to run those marathons. Life is not, it's not a 100-yard dash. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And all the cliches that go with it, they're all written for a reason. There's a reason why people have said these things,
Yes.
and you should pay attention to them. Joe Louis, the great boxer, has a great quote about overcoming severe setback. What was it? Mike Tyson said, a fight plan is great until you get punched in the mouth, right? That's his line. Joe Lewis's line is just as effective to me.
Cool.
Says you get knocked down in the ring, you can't get up so fast that nobody didn't know you got knocked down. So take the 10 count. They're giving you the 10 count for a reason. To get your shit together before you go back out there. Don't be so macho. Oh, no.
Yeah.
When you get a setback in business, like I said, reflect on what happened. Think about what happened. Retool and reapply. Take that time. Don't be embarrassed by it. Same thing, music business, shoe business, steel business. But the entertainment business is a tough ass business, man. It is, because it's a what have you done for me lately business. Yeah. What I noticed about our success was, we had the Stay Hungry went platinum. The first question was, hey man, that's great. So when's your next record coming out? I'm going, can I just enjoy this for like
exactly
2 months?
I'm on the top of the mountain. Let me take in the view.
How many times does an actor win an Academy Award? Well, that's great. So when's your next movie coming? Can you just ask me how I'm feeling today? And let me just enjoy this. Entertainment business is the toughest business of all. We have to constantly regenerate.
Yeah.
And in the entertainment business in general, whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's interesting too from the fans' perspective, particularly the people that just know your greatest hits, like the biggest of the big songs, or have seen some of the performances on TV or whatever, for them to understand the background of how your identity, your presence, your costumes, everything was forged in fire, was forged through constant audience feedback. And that's what helped, in addition to your artistic sensibilities, but that's what ended up helping to turn the band into what the national stage and the international stage ended up experiencing.
True, but you can't explain that to everybody, which is why I say success is like an iceberg.
Okay.
What the public sees is a shiny tip sticking out of the ocean, and underneath the surface is this gigantic block of ice. That's what successful businesses are. It's what's underneath the surface is what makes you great. You can't tell it to everybody on every story, but what is the tangible proof of it is the end product.
Yeah.
The end shiny product that sticks above the ocean line is only as good as the surface underneath. And that is the gravitas for any business. I don't care what it is. You go to the best restaurants in the world. You don't want to sit there and know how the chef is cooking it. You just want the best damn dish on your plate, don't you?
Exactly.
I mean, that's really the truth. So while this voracious desire to get behind the scenes of absolutely everything that exists, because social media is just destroying and ripping apart, and everybody wants to know the secret.
Yep.
I don't know if the secret is too much of a secret. It's called work hard, motherfucker. I mean, that's the whole secret. If you don't want to work hard, then fuck it. But if you think, hey, I'm going to be a social influencer and I'm going to have 1 million followers and be great. Yeah, you may. Ain't going to last too long. This is another reason why all artists, regardless of their genre, that have lasted many years in the business, I have ultimate respect for. Whether it's a genre I like or don't like, doesn't matter. It's a hard business to be in.
Yeah.
Tough business. Country, rap, hip hop, female pop artists. I don't care if you're if you play polka music. I mean, if you last 20, 30, 40 years, people don't know what it takes to do that. It's enormous. And for that, I give people go, oh, do you think so-and-so sucks? I go, no. They're hardworking. And just because I don't like it doesn't mean a damn thing. Yeah. Everyone has a right to like something. Plenty of people think we suck. The Beatles are considered like the best of the best, and I'm a huge Beatle fan. But, my wife doesn't like the Beatles. I don't sit there and get an argument. I don't defend General Motors to her. Right. They're like General Motors. What are you defending for?
Yeah.
I go, I don't need to play them in the house. I can play them whenever I want. And big deal. And people go, well, you suck. Yeah, okay, good. I don't care. You like that other band? I really don't. I don't sit there and defend anything. It's not worth my time and effort. You
Yeah.
like it, you like it, you don't, you don't. And when people say, well, I think the Beatles, and I go, oh, what the hell? They don't care. I certainly don't care.
Yeah.
They just are who they are. And obviously people do, but that doesn't matter. The bottom line is you can't be everything to everybody. I've seen Jimi Hendrix great and I've seen him shitty.
Yes.
People don't want to know about it. He was horrible. And I walked out going, that sucked. And then I saw him 6 months later and he was the best I'd ever seen. He had a bad night.
Yeah.
No, Zeppelin, I've seen him phenomenal. I've seen him horrible. Horrible. Like, what are you thinking? And I've seen it's one of the greatest bands in the world.
Yeah.
I've seen the Rolling Stones great, and I've seen them horrible. I walked out on them 3 times. But I also will tell you that in my top 5 all time, they're in there in the top 5 all time. When they were great, they were great. I mean, that's and I won't defend it to whatever. They delivered to me when I needed it. Hendrix delivered to me when I needed it. I grew up in an era where you could see all these bands on a weekly basis, so it was no big deal.
Yeah.
All playing every weekend for $3 or $2 or $1. No shit. In 1969 alone, I saw Zeppelin 4 times. I don't think I paid more than $4 for any of their shows. I saw Hendrix twice. I don't think I paid more than $5 for those tickets. I saw the Stones 3 times. I don't think I spent more than $6 for those tickets. I saw the Grateful Dead 5 times. I don't think I paid more than $3 for those tickets. I saw 10 Years After, Johnny Winter, Muddy Waters, Jeff Beck twice with Rod Stewart. I don't think I paid more than $4 to see them. This was what 1969 was like. But don't hate me. This is what New York City was like if you're a rock fan.
Yes.
It was like we all did the same shit. We all went to the Fillmore. We all went to this. We all went to that. We saw this. We did this en masse because we could. Now, it's a luxury to have that much greatness on a weekly basis. Reinforce your love of the music that you love.
Yes.
Does not exist today.
Yes.
That's a tragedy.
Yeah.
That's the sad part, is that you can't do that the way we did that. And we are an example of what happens when you have that.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do today. Do I go to shows? I go once in a while. Not that I can't afford it, but although the ticket prices are completely stupid, but I'm not that excited by it anymore because I've played thousands of shows and seen thousands of shows, and I'm a little burnt out about it.
Yeah.
You ever wonder why they ask retired football players sometimes? They go, wow, man, 2 Super Bowl rings. Wow, it's great. How often you watch your team? I don't. What do you mean? How many games you go to? I don't. You don't watch your team? No. Well, why not? Well, since I was 10. I played football, and then I killed myself, and then I was in the main, and then finally goes, I'm done, man. You know. Now, that doesn't mean that they all do that. But I never understood the guys who said that until I became that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now people go, well, don't you miss? No, the answer is no.
Yep.
If I never see another live show for the rest of my life, I'm totally fine by it. But my wife wants to go, we'll go.
Yeah.
She wants to see the Eagles at the Sphere, we'll go to the Eagles at the Sphere. She loves it.
Yeah.
I'm all there for her.
Yeah.
But me, I've seen it all. And there's nothing you're going to do anymore except the Sphere, I have to tell you.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Right.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Anybody playing the Sphere would take advantage of that unbelievable presentation. It's mind-blowing, and you probably should see it at least once just to know how technology has taken you. But is it any more revolutionary than the light shows of the Fillmore East were in 1969? No.
Right.
Nobody did that in 1969. All of a sudden, there's like shit blowing in and out, and everyone's on acid and shit. And it was and now it's this unbelievable technical creation that is impossible to describe unless you see it. And I saw the Dead there recently, only because my wife wanted to go see them there. And we went. I have to tell you, the Dead are lucky enough to have lasted long enough to have been the recipients of a breakthrough technology in the 60s with the light show, the Joshua Light Show, whatever. Yeah. And now the Sphere.
Cool.
That's a hell of a
run. Yeah.
Hell of a run. Got to give them that. Even if you didn't like them. Yeah. The show was mind-blowing.
Love that.
A mind-blowing show. So again, those circumstances may excite me. But for the most part, if you would say to me, JJ, what's the best show you ever saw? This is going to be my response. Having seen Sinatra, Elvis, Zeppelin as an opening band, there's a t-shirt that says, I'm so old, I saw the Grateful Dead on stage. I'm so old, I saw the Dead as an opening band. Okay, that's how old I am. Okay. Having seen what I consider the greatest artists in the world, the The show that I singularly consider the greatest night of rock and roll I ever witnessed was not based on any preconceived notion of what I was about to see, nor by a band that I anticipated would have been as great as they were. But in hindsight, in retrospect, it doesn't surprise me because the level of the musicians were so ridiculously good that the fact that they delivered an absolutely transcendent performance is really not surprising. And I have met a couple of people who saw those shows back at the Fillmore in 1969, and they said, that was one of the greatest shows. So I know that what I saw. So Leon Russell and Mad Dogs and Englishmen were touring with Joe Cocker, and then Joe Cocker came off the road, and Leon took the band with him for a while. And he went to the Fillmore one night, and I walked into the Fillmore that night, and I saw Leon Russell, Carl Radle on bass, and Jim Keltner on drums, and Rita Coolidge on vocals, and Don Preston on guitar. And I can just tell you that whatever exhilaration rock and roll is supposed to give you, whatever vibe you're supposed to get, whatever phantasmagorical emotional connection you're supposed to make that makes you want to sacrifice everything you've ever owned in the world to be that was it. That lies on the top of Hendrix at the Fillmore during Band of Gypsies. That lies on the top of the Rolling Stones in 1969 at the Garden. I was at all three shows. They're right up there. Best I've ever seen. Beck, right after his motorcycle accident, saw him at Carnegie Hall. Bowie Spiders from Mars, saw him twice.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I mean, these are amazing shows.
Yes.
And they're all great. They all deliver transcendental experiences, correct. 10 years after, right after Woodstock, Leslie West in a little bar, in a tiny little bar in an Italian restaurant uptown, Mountains show just before Woodstock, their second show ever. Then they went to Woodstock the next day. Walked into a private party at a little club called Ongano's, which is this Italian restaurant on the Upper West Side, which these places exist back then, but don't exist now. I walked into a private party in which Free was playing. There was no stage. They were on the floor. There was about 20 people in the room. I stood right in front of Paul Kossoff. My friend stood right in front of Paul Rogers, like 2 feet away from them. And then a private jam session took place with about 20 people in the room. And the jam session was Delaney, Bonnie, Eric Clapton, Stevie Winwood, Dr. John, Rick Gretsch from Blind Faith, and Jim Keltner from Delaney, Bonnie. And they played for 3 hours to me and my friend David and about 20 people at a private party. You have those nights, right? And you go, oh.
Yeah, this is music. Yep.
This is it, right?
Yep.
So I'm telling you these stories, and you're sitting there going, I can't believe you just. or I walked into Ongano's again, this little Italian restaurant. There was 2 of these places in New York in the 60s. Muddy Waters was playing. The club was sold out. There was no seats available. Yep. The club owner said, go on the stage and sit on Muddy Waters' amp. I sat on his twin reverb the whole night.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm fucking sitting on Muddy Waters' amplifier. Shit, it's hot, but I'm not leaving.
I'm getting up. Yeah.
It's hot, but I'm not getting up.
Exactly.
So they're great. But Leon Russell, Mad Dogs that night, delivered it for me.
Yeah. And I recommend anybody that hasn't seen that, there's the concert DVD with Mad Dogs and Joe Cocker with Leon Russell. That was like one of the coolest, if not the coolest concert DVDs I've ever seen. And that changed my mind about a lot of things. Because it was
Leon Russell is a giant, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fucking giant. And Elton John made an album with him before he died and toured with him. I saw that tour, by the way.
Cool.
Leon Russell was a motherfucker, not to mention the fact that he ran the whole Phil Spector crew down, in LA during the 60s and on the Christmas album, the Phil Spector. Leon Russell's just amazing musician, great singer, great songwriter. I get really emotional thinking about these shows because they'll never happen again for me. Right. Oh, but by the way, as great a show as that is, I can also say this. If you get the DVD, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones, that was recorded in Dallas in 1970. It was the week after they played the Garden. It was like December of 79, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones. You watch that, and now you'll see why they were considered the greatest rock and roll band on earth.
Cool. I will. This leads me perfectly to my last question. So the show is called Love Music More, and the segment is called Love Music Why. You're already talking about it, but this is just a moment to talk about why you love music itself. Why it pushed you through all of these, trials and tribulations. You're still doing it, still loving it.
So it fell in love with a record called Hey Paula, which was an insignificant pop single in 1963. That was number 1 on the radio. I didn't understand why it was number 1, but it was number 1 for 6 weeks, and I didn't understand what the chart was, what the survey was. I was 10 years old listening to the radio. I was homesick from school. I became obsessed with charts. Like, why does the chart change, but this song is still number 1? I didn't know. I asked my mom. She didn't know. She looked at me like I had 2 heads, like, the addiction to that song changed my life. And that was in February of 63. And then, of course, the Beatles hit 1 year later. And that, as we all say, guys my age who saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, it's the cliche of cliches, isn't it? I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I wanted to be in a rock band. That's what happened. But it was my love of pop music. So I'm much more of a pop guy than I am anything else. I mean, I like, I'm a blues guitar player at heart, and a blues fan and a pop fan, and metal then comes third of that line. That's what addicted me to it. And look, I don't care if it's me being addicted to pop music or a 10-year-old kid watching a Olympic gold medal skier and going, I want to do that. I can't tell you how many actresses, I went to see Annie when I was 8 and went to Broadway and said to my mom, that's what I want to do. And then they kill themselves to become Broadway stars. One real short story. I was doing a motivational speaking weekend with many professionals, and there was only one other performer who had a story to tell. And she was the longest running Christine in Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. And so I did my whole thing on a Friday, and she closed it on a Saturday. And she's telling her whole story that she was 8 years old and went to see Annie, my mom. And then she took dance and singing. And she finally got in, she killed herself and then finally got onto the road show of Phantom, always wanting the big break. When is that big break coming? It was very much like a Twisted Sister story. Setback. Finally gets a big break, gets the audition, fails the audition. Crushed. Goes back on the road. Can't believe it. This is probably the end of my life, because if I'm not good enough for this, it's not going to happen. Gets another shot at it. Blows it. At this point, it's the end. She gets one more shot. And she nails it. She gets the gig. For 10 years. She's the longest running Christine on Broadway. Okay? Now, she's telling the story. She's playing videos. She's showing her photos. An incredible story, right? At the end of it, I walk up to her and I say to her, wow. I said, I hadn't really heard another story kind of like mine. It's amazing. When are you doing your next show? And she says, if I never sing another song on Broadway, you couldn't pay me enough to do it. And I realized that's how sometimes it finally happens, So when people say to me, it's Twisted getting back together again, I say, we've done it thousands. I've done it thousands. If it happens, it happens. But I'm not sitting there playing air guitar in front of a mirror anymore. I'm too busy promoting my website, promoting my podcast, which is the JJ French Connection on Spotify, too busy promoting my book, which is called Twisted Business, which is really a great business book. You can get it on Amazon. And I do motivational speaking. And if you want to hire me, you go to jjfrench.com and you can fill out a form and hire me. And I do motivational and keynote speeches for corporations now, in which I tell the story. Yes. Because the story is a universal story of business success. It's not just a music. And I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate you coming on, JJ.
You asked great questions, by the way.
You.
You really did ask really good questions.
I really appreciate that. I really do care. And half of this podcast just for me. I'm trying to make it as a producer, engineer, musician myself, and hearing these stories direct from the source and being able to interface with that. I can't tell you the amount of motivation and excitement that cultivates in myself that I'm going to bring into my weekend, where I'm going to work too hard and I'm going to lose sleep because I'm going to be having dreams of recording. This is what validates that. That's what pours the fuel back on that fire and keeps it going. So I really appreciate you.
To that point, the fact that I was able to go to the Fillmore East every weekend to see my heroes, whether it was Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix or Jeff Beck or Jerry Garcia or Muddy Waters or Johnny Winter or B.B. King or Alvin Lee, you go to them every night. You come home at 3 a.m, you put a guitar and stand in front of a mirror and go, today I'm Jerry. Today I'm Alvin Lee. Today I'm Dwayne Allman. Today I'm Muddy Waters. That's what I had. Yeah. You don't have that anymore. You can't do that for a musician, but you can do this by having these podcasts, right? It's this reaffirmation that the road you're on is the right road to be on. And it's the passion. Remember, passion is the fuel when you don't have money. It really is. You have to be so passionate and you have to believe so much, and apparently you do. So good luck to you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining.
Take care.